There is no script, it's only me this time. Hello everybody, welcome. This is my first time trying to comment over something I've done, which is this study of Master Frank Frazetta's work. I always loved when I first saw Frazetta's work back. How old was I? 16, I believe. Well, when I first saw his work, I was mesmerized, and it's a type of painting that I know before Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings redefined what's fantasy, or what fantasy looks like in the general zeitgeist of the world. Oh, I should clarify. Western European style fantasy. Before that, Frazetta's work was the very definition of it. You can even see it on the works of other artists from around the world. There's even Japanese artists I like whose composition or even rendering is inspired by Frazetta. But for now, let's talk about the real deal, about Mr. Frazetta himself. And there's also great contemporaries, which I'll get to. When you want to learn art, people usually say online, just study raw, but there's never a clear consensus on what does studying mean, and it seems everybody has their own definition of studying. By the way, you might notice there, in a moment I'm going to misalign intentionally the part of the axe where Conan is grabbing onto, because it's also slightly misaligned. I think I already did that there. It's slightly misaligned on the original painting, as I kept double and triple checking, and it was like, okay, so it maybe it's because it was a traditional work made under deadline. But the painting is so well executed, you won't notice this stuff that's small. So I actually love noticing when professionals have situations like that. Because I don't want to call it a mistake. I feel that sounds bad. I mean, just more like they have to continue, because it puts it back into perspective that even amazing painters that are deeply admired are still people, and part of the beauty of art should be also the acknowledgement of very, very, very slight flaws. Not like my own flaws that I keep correcting with the lasso tool here. But anyway, I think it's a shame that Frazetta's work outside of nowadays niche fandoms, it's no longer used. For example, a friend told me this reminded him of the cover of the game, of the 1993 game Doom, and it's because the cover of that game is very, very clearly, for lack of a better term, Frazetta pastiche in its composition. Because it's really eye-catching, it's very dynamic, it looks great. Right? It looks great. But it's a shame how nowadays what's trendy on posters and covers and the like is nothing like this, nothing this dynamic, not a whole composition like this, but rather I've heard it called floating heads. And I get why, especially with movies, I get why they want to give like a clear shot of the actors. Movie posters, old-timey movie posters, when I look for them online, were hand painted. So they had the chance to be, even if one of those painted parts was a close-up to an actor's likeness, it was a whole composition. Now I think it's just easier to have the quote-unquote floating heads, the title of the movie, the credits. So it's a shame this has become a little bit of a lost art, but time is a spiral, trends return, maybe we're eventually going to see something like this return. But anyway, back into what's in the study. I'm so sorry, I just keep jumping from subject to subject. When I was in an art gallery studying, my art teacher told me part of the learning the process was reproducing others' work to get a clearer understanding than you could just get by looking at it. Like, by actually trying to reproduce it, you can get into the mindset of the original artist. And also, when I was painting people either in person or in photographs, it will give me an understanding on how the body works, because my art teacher is an excellent painter, but he, by his own admission, and this stuck out to me a lot, told me he knows nothing about anatomy on a technical side. He told me, I don't know the name of the muscles, I don't know the name of the bones, but I can just draw them and paint them because I've been drawing people. It became second nature. And you know what? Fair. It makes sense. That's a sort of study. It's less maybe technical, less technical in the sense that you don't have the what will be the right term, the vocabulary to call it, but you have the knowledge to portray it, and that's what got me into wanting to make a study of Frank Frazetta, because for a while now I've wanted to be able to understand his work, to be able to draw, even if I'm not good at it at first, to get close to his work, which to me never ceased to be impressive. I knew I had to study it, and what's studying to me but to try to reproduce it and to get an understanding, a deeper understanding of it by attempting to reproduce it. Later on I found out this is called a master study and this is a thing. Oh, so I'm glad I was on the right track. I was on the right mindset. Oh, brother. For this, I try to do everything on a single layer. I try to do it as if it was traditional painting. The program I'm using is called Rebel 5. It's a really good program that emulates really well the weight of oil painting, the physics of watercolors and the like. So I wholeheartedly recommend it if you want to do painterly drawings, because for the longest time as I've been trying to learn digital art, I've been using Clip Studio Paint, but I never liked how Clip Studio Paint looked. It never looked right to me, and maybe it's because I've looked at real old paintings for a while now, as I've been trying to study, like actually in person and in the gallery and in the museum. This was the closest by a long shot to looking like the real thing. You can even do impasto in this. It's great. Which takes me to another part of painting, of what is legit, the direction and weight of the brush strokes. And a lot... There are many contemporaries to Frank Frazetta who are amazing, like Gerald Brom or Boris Vallejo. Their art, at least on the internet as they are, look very finely detailed. They look amazing, but as a matter of personal taste, I'm more of a fan of bold brushing, of kind of like French Impressionism, but less colorful. For example, here for Conan, since he's a subject, I'm going to be doing my best, because again, I'm learning digital art. It's very much a different horse. I'm usually more of a graphite and charcoal person. But I'm trying to do him as well defined as possible in his chest, shoulders, upper arms. here this arm that's grabbing onto the axe, and then just after the pectoral area, just going less and less detailed, and also everything around him to create more or less the illusion of, like, when you're focused on a single thing in front of you, everything else kind of gets blurry, sort of to create that illusion. And also again, because I'm a massive fan of artwork that's just bold strokes. And this decision came from, again, when I was in the art gallery studying. One of my teacher's favorite paintings was like was called let me check. In Spanish it's called Las Meninas, but in English, okay, it's called Las Meninas in English too. By Diego Velázquez, because I think a lot of people have seen it just the piece as a whole on smaller thumbnails, either online or on magazines. But he showed me like a life size, and it wasn't that. Yeah, it wasn't. Anyway, he showed me a very high quality print replica of it, because it's his favorite painting of all time. It was the painting that pushed him into art, and I could. He was explaining, for example, since it was a portrait, Diego Velázquez was painting by looking at the mirror so much. You can see him painting the paint as he was looking at the mirror itself. His hand grabbing the brush is like 2 brush strokes. It's just so expertly done. It looks like a hand, but when you get really close and look, it's like 2 or 3 brush strokes. It's very impressive, and I think it shows how much of a non-pro I am, because it changed my perspective a little bit, or rather, it solidified my perspective on how ultimately art is all about illusions, on how you're forcing these materials to look like something, because our brains are very much hardwired to seek patterns for the sake of survival, and this has worked perfectly for the sake of the art world, because it's basically brute forcing colors and shapes into looking to something like, yes, our brain goes like, yes, I recognize that's a man grabbing an ugly man, and those are earrings, yes. It's very interesting how our brains take such an important part on how we perceive art, and on what looks realistic. Of course, there's painters that look hyper realism, that looks amazing, like Alex Ross, for example. But looking at Frazetta's work for this study, it's impressive how on a glance it looks so realistic, so intimidating, but the closer you get a look, you see the brush strokes, you see how it was realized, and some might say it's like looking at a magician's illusions. It breaks the fun of it, but for me it doesn't break it. It makes it even better. The understanding of it makes me even right now talking about it makes me smile like a fool. But also I think it's encouraging for anybody who wants to draw, that to not get overwhelmed, that to just trust the process, that you're ultimately brute forcing paint and shapes. For example, right there, using more or less my knowledge on traditional media in this program, again it's Rebel 5, it's really good for this, I put the paint on top of a bit and began to drag it to make the blending and create the shapes. It's great, and you're just doing that, and it just, our brain ends up interpreting it as something that looks more or less real. Of course, over here you can see I'm just going looser with more brush strokes, because I'm a huge fan of brush strokes. I'm a huge fan of that sort of like impressionistic look. And I'll have to admit, one of my bias, another painter I really like, that's This is going to be a part where people will not take me seriously anymore, where I'll lose any sort of goodwill from people. But another painter I like, it's a Japanese man whose name is Yusuke Nakano, and this is a part why. He's an artist who works for Nintendo, and he did the paintings for The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. But there is one painting in particular. I got the art book, Art and Artifacts, and my favorite of his works in that book. He began with painting from Ocarina of Time up to the concept art for Skyward Sword. Anyway, it's the painting where the protagonist of Twilight Princess, Link, is fighting two knight enemies known as the Dark Knights. Because Link himself, at least his upper body and his sword, are very clearly defined, but the lower you get on Link's body, the messier the painting looks. And the Dark Knights, both the one at the foreground and the one at the background, are very loosely defined. They just look, when you look at the painting as a whole, it looks very detailed, overwhelmingly so, but when you start to put attention to the finer details, you understand that how art ultimately is an illusion. By the way, that guy over there, not the one I'm working on, but the other one with the face. I didn't. I mean, when I looked at him when I was studying this particular original painting by Frazetta, when I was working on this. He was so funny looking. I love that guy. How Master Frazetta just painted that fella at the very back, so simple, with the eyes being just white brushes with two black dots, and the expression being like, oh. Funny fella. I love it. I love it. Especially he looks so funny in contrast to the other guy in the back who's like chiaroscuro. How is it called in English? Chiaroscuro. Anyway, he's like deep shadows, bright lights. It's so funny. Also, when I was studying this, particular pain I do is when you notice mistakes very deep into the painting or the illustration if you're working on graphite. Because you have to fix on the go. I have to fix his arm. I think I'm about to do it here. I'm going to have to paint on top of what I already had done to be able to fix the mistake. But hey, that's also the point of doing this, to make a mental note of your mistakes and to fix them, and to be able to fix them on the. I think this is a part. Yes, this is a part where I begin to just paint on top of what I already had to fix it. It's part of it to just be able to fix it on the spot, because again, for this one I tried to do as few layers as possible. I wanted to reproduce as closely as possible the original experience of painting. I think I only made a layer for some minor line art to define some boundaries. Because I felt unsure about those, but yeah, but I don't know. It's just art is like opinions. It's such a personal thing. Maybe people will disagree to how I'm handling all of this. Maybe people will hate how the further away I get from my subject, which is Conan, I just get looser and looser and looser. And with exception of the beer mug, which I'll paint shortly a little bit more detailed, because to me the mug itself was a subject. I think because seeing the paint there, I mean the beer mug on the air is a subject in itself that adds dynamism, and our eyes are also drawn right into, because usually you don't see a mug in the air, because you instantly know that's about to drip and get all over the table or the people or anything. So our eyes, it's like when you see an object drop and your eyes are drawn to it either in a movie or in real life. Your eyes are just mesmerized by by the sense of oh no. Here I could have maybe done a little less line art, to be perfectly honest, but I felt a little unsure about this area, especially the light and shadows. I was like, not too detailed, but also not too... I think ultimately it worked out in the final paint. But yeah, and also here for the helmet, I don't know about you, but doing metal, especially in a digital medium, is some of the hardest things to do. And I try to do like the reflections of of the colors around it, but also the the silvery of the metal. It's not silver, it's more like iron. The iron color of the metal. The light, the shadows, looking like on a passing glance it looks like metal, but also not giving it too much detail, as to not contrast with the rest of the foreground, the body of the man, which, as you can see, the muscles are very simple brushwork. I didn't. It was a little bit of neither too detailed nor too loose. It was a little hard balance to achieve. But here's the mug. As you can see, I'm starting again with brushes, and then I start to drag in the paint to create some blending, to create some blending for the colors. And I keep going back and forth because I keep looking at everything. It's like, no, I gotta make it look good. And the foam, I went a little looser because I felt the texture of the knife alone could achieve the texture of the foam, and I feel that was the right call. I think it does look foamy, especially in a little bit of an impasto. It's again, art is all about illusions. And that's a thing that unfortunately Clip Studio Paint cannot replicate, but Rebel can, is impasto. Impasto helps a lot with the texture. For example, for the wood, to be able to do the wood texture in the table, I opened the loading to have a lot of impasto and have the hairbrush make the illusion of wood, and just some minor shadowing from yours truly. And again, it's just a matter of blending, brush strokes, highlights. So it looks here I was more or less inspired by the Menina's example I mentioned earlier when I was talking about it. Even though I have a clear reference on the corner, I was trying to reflect back on everything I have been learning so far. And while it's not one to Frazetta's original, darn it, I tried my best. I hope the result is still satisfactory, but at a personal level, I am very, very satisfied with the result. Even if it took many hours, I'm so satisfied. Well, thank you everybody for hearing me yap. Take care, and I hope you have a good day. See ya!